Hey, welcome back to the Road to React. Today we're going to talk about advanced state. And basically what we're going to do is introduce the idea of Redux. Robin mentioned at the beginning of the book that this is not a book about Redux, but he introduced Redux here, which I'm glad he did. I'm really curious about Redux. It's still confusing to me, so I'm glad he at least touched on it in this book. So let's do it. Let's change our state to a Redux-based state. As you can see here, we have our code, our app, input label, etc., list component, etc., etc. So you get the point. So okay, so what are the changes that we're gonna make? We're gonna start off with a, let me see, what's a good place to introduce this Redux change? How about, yeah, the place that makes the most sense to change first is the actual stories right here, this line right here, 46. Let's change this so it uses Redux. Okay, so we are going to replace our, so this is the old way and this is the new way. Okay, there we go. So what did we do? Well, instead of use state, we're using a use reducer hook that takes in two arguments. One is a function, the reducer itself, and obviously you don't know what this is yet. We haven't defined it yet. And the second one is what I believe is the initial state, but let me double check that. Yeah, I think that's supposed to be the initial state. So this is considered, the stories reducer is considered the reducer, and you'll see what that is here in a second. It's basically just the function. Okay, so let's get rid of the old way. So I feel like this is a good place to introduce Redux. Okay, just this use reducer, just what's the word I'm looking for now here? The use reducer hook. Wow, can't believe I forgot that word. Okay, so now next up is I'm gonna show you how to we're actually going to define the stories reducer, the actual reducer. So let's put that, where are we going to put that? Let's put that just outside the app. Okay, so up here we have the reducer. We call it stories reducer because it's a reducer. And don't worry, I mean, I shouldn't say don't worry about what reducer is exactly. I would say look up reducer, the concept of reducer in terms of Redux. But when you do that, then you have to look into Redux itself, and it's going to take you down a rabbit hole, and it's a whole new book. So for now, just all you need to know is this function takes care of changing states in many ways, not just one way, not just setting, but also removing a story, for example, setting stories and removing stories. And it takes in two arguments. As you can see, it's a function. It takes in two arguments, the state and the action. So in the action, we have, it's an object, has many different types of information. It has the type, the payload, etc. And it has the actual, state that we use to, that we actually manipulate or return. Okay, so that's the reducer. It's a function, two arguments, the state, and the action that we're doing. And all it's doing is going through the action, going through the type attribute of the action object and checking what we're trying to do. So in case of setting stories, all we're doing is just returning whatever is inside of action, whatever stories are inside of action. And again, this is definitely not very clear for sure, and even to me this is not 100% clear. That's why maybe I'm not doing a great job of explaining it, but I'm just trying to move forward but making sure that I understand the most important aspect of this lesson. That's the way I look at it. I'm not going to try to understand every single part. Okay, so let's move on. So we did two things. We changed the use state hook to use reducer, and then we defined the reducer. That's all we did. What's next? Well, wherever you're probably thinking, okay, whenever we are changing the story state, right? Wherever that is, and let me find it. Oh, right here. Set stories, right here. We're gonna change that. We're not gonna. So this is the old way of doing it. We're gonna change it to the new way. Okay, so the new way of doing it is we're gonna call on a function called dispatch stories, and we provide the type, which in this case we're trying to set the stories, and the payload, which is just, remember where I'm doing this. I'm doing this in I'm sorry if I confused you guys. This is actually not the right place where we're doing it, where we should be doing it. We're actually, so this, I was trying to do this in, let me take this out. I don't want to do this part just yet, although that part we have to do as well, but here actually. So this is the old way, and this, okay, there we go. So instead of set stories here, we're calling on the function dispatch story. We're providing it with an object, and you might be wondering, well, where is dispatch stories? Well, it was actually, dispatch stories is in the first thing that we changed. Remember that? So right here in the reducer, and where we call it the use reducer hook, we're extracting a stories and a dispatch stories from this hook. And stories, as you can imagine, is the stories, the state stories, and this is dispatch stories, which is the function that we use to change stories, not just set stories, the primitive setting. It could be anything. So now we're like there's a lot more options here, and that's what we're doing here. We have access to dispatch stories because of this line right here, so we can set the stories. All right, well, now we can move on and change this one as well. So again, this is the old way, and we're gonna introduce a new way, right? So same thing. This part doesn't change. Well, yeah, so here we remove a story, so that's correct. Actually, I just realized. No, actually, I'm sorry. This is correct. Set stories here and remove story here. Remember, this is, I know the code might be a little bit confusing. This is, let me minimize some of these things. This is in handle remove story function. And then this is in use effect hook. So when we load the data initially, this is how we set it. Okay, I hope I made some sense. Honestly, I'm doing a terrible job with these tutorials. I'll be completely honest. It's not my best work, but I'm mainly doing it to learn React myself, and this will hopefully help me do so. So let me get rid of the old ways of doing things, and I think we're good. I think we just introduced Redux in a very simple way, like, you know, and let's see if it works. You know what I mean? Let's make sure. Let's refresh the page. No error messages, so that's good. There's our items, and everything still works. You know. So yeah, no errors here. That's it. Just like that, we just introduced Redux. I hope this was somewhat helpful. All right, till next time, take care.